I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, my name is Lauren Kling and welcome to World on Fire. This is the after show, the breakdown of this PBS masterpiece show. I am not here alone. I am joined by Tori Weaver. How you doing, Tori?
I'm good. I'm super excited to start talking about the show, actually.
And I am too. And the reason why you love shows like this is you had said that you love period pieces.
Yes. Yes. I'm a stickler for history mixed with drama and just kind of like blending them both together to provide a great show or movie. That's my thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume that we're both Downton Abbey fans.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you even know, before Downton Abbey, way back in the day on PBS, they had a show called Upstairs, Downstairs that was kind of the same thing. It was about the butlers downstairs and
Oh,
the
wow.
and the family upstairs, kind of an old school show. But that's amazing that we both have we both love history. I'm a Los Angeles tour guide specializing in Hollywood history. So I love history. I could stare at photographs of places I've lived forever and ever. And isn't this basically moving photographs that we're watching?
Yes. Yes, it is. I think
Yeah.
that love kind of comes from, I'm from Washington, D.C., so we're always surrounded by artifacts and things like
Yes.
that. So I have that same, I can just stare at a picture for hours as well.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. So in this show, World on Fire, it follows the lives of ordinary civilians in Britain and Poland, France, and Germany during World War II. It's basically, we're following several different families between 1939 and the Nazi invasion of Poland. Now, that's all I know, at least for the start. I didn't want to learn too much about the show. I want to watch it as it comes out. So any thoughts about this opening episode?
Yeah, for starters, I think compared to a lot of other not necessarily pilot, but first episodes of a season, you don't really get too much action. You're kind of just understanding the groundwork of the story that's going to unfold. But I think this one was a lot different. There was a lot more action, a lot more death. Just it was so much coming at you fast. And I like how they didn't really like hold your hand through the episode, but they just kind of like hit the ground running and the story already started to unfold in episode one, so you were automatically hooked. And that's why I'm so looking forward to the rest of the series, because this first episode just did a really good job of drawing us in.
Right. So we start off in March 1939 in Manchester, England, where we meet Douglas Bennett. And first we see Douglas Bennett and Leslie Manville. No, before that, sorry. We start with the Black Shirts, which is a
Mhm.
local British Nazi party group. And we see Harry and Lois, who are kind of in there singing like a protest song, and they get beat up and kicked out. So immediately we follow along and we learn that there's Nazism and that idea already in England before Poland ever gets attacked. And then we kind of start meeting her family. We meet his family. And just like Downton Abbey, they're from two different worlds. Harry
Yeah.
is a translator who's from a wealthy family with a cold mom, and she is from a family who we don't know what happened to the mom, and her
Right.
father is a pacifist. So kind of sets it up, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Like I said, it hits the ground running. It already shows you the dynamic. It kind of shows you this forbidden love, Romeo and Juliet sort of thing. So, like I said, it just, you already in the beginning are seeing these layers. Like you said, you see the Nazi presence, you see the, I guess, classism that kind of exists. You see these lovers who feel like they can't really have a relationship. And you know, from the beginning, before they kind of reveal where he's going, that he's eventually going to move away. So, so many things that are already introduced within those first 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. And then not only is Lois a factory worker, we haven't really seen her working, but she's a jazz singer. So we have a heavy jazz influence in the episode throughout. We've got
Mhm.
her as a jazz singer. We've got a French jazz musician who plays into the episode as well. So it's really nice to kind of to see this, but also it sets up the worlds of some people and I'm trying to remember his aunt, played by Helen Hunt, journalist Nancy Campbell, who sees the writing on the wall early, mixed in with her nephew and Lois and everyone kind of still having fun.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, you can kind of see, like you said, the journalist, honestly, she's the only one that seems to have a complete grasp of what's going on from the very beginning. She wastes no time. And her efforts to try to inform as many people as she can, especially the people that she cares about and are close to, it's like you feel for her. And I feel so bad because it seems like no one is listening. And of course, because we know from history playing out that she's right. And so her
Yeah.
character, she's really trying. She's really trying.
Right. So while that's going on in Manchester, a lot of the action is happening in Poland. Harry is a translator in Warsaw, and he's got his local girlfriend, Kasia. Meanwhile, Lois is at home wondering why he's not writing to her. Lois goes to meet Harry's mom, who seems to be very cold about the men in her life. I think that she's been upset that while probably him and her husband, I'm assuming, maybe was in World War One, and were more concerned about fighting than thinking about their women. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think we'll definitely see more about her character and kind of understand why she feels the way that she does. I mean, we can kind of already see that she has a classist type of mindset. She already doesn't like Lewis off the bat because of the family that she comes from in the background. And even when her son calls her later on in the episode, you can see that her concern is not about his well-being or if he's okay, but if he's going to be back in time for a party that she's having. So you can kind of see that she's really more so focused on image and her position in the world, and
Hmm.
instead of what's going on in the world in a larger scale. So I think in the episode we'll definitely see why she feels this way. I mean, maybe we won't. Maybe she's just there to serve as somebody opposed to Lewis, that has a different mindset. So I think we'll definitely kind of dive deeper into his background when he returns home
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. And she basically told Lois, don't think about him. Just give him up. Move on. But of course,
Yeah.
Lois doesn't want to move on because that's kind of all she's got, that in her music and her father and her deadbeat brother, who's just getting in trouble, not doing anything. So meanwhile, Kaja and Harry are at Kaja's home with the
Hmm.
father and the family taking a photograph. And the father and brother and the son are basically getting ready afterwards to go out to fight the Germans. And all they can muster up from Danzig are 40 people and only 6 who actually fought in the previous war. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, we don't have enough. There's nobody, some of them are assuming that the English are going to come and rescue them, but that's way off. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, I guess, watching it, even though it is a timepiece, so we know how this is all going to play out. But even in that scene, when you said like there's only 6 people who are trained soldiers, and the rest of them are just kind of people who want to help the cause and want to fight, it shows you how much of a team effort it was to protect, their home. And it, like you said, it was just kind of sad because you love the. I mean, we all love a good underdog story. We love it. We
Mhm.
love when the town comes together and is able to beat this like well-oiled machine, but we just know that's not realistic for this situation. So it kind of breaks your heart because like in this episode we see that even the trained ones, even the not so trained one, everyone is dying basically. Like it's
Yeah.
just not enough. They just don't have enough. And like you said, they have this hope that maybe they'll get some relief from some neighboring countries and things like that, but where they stand right now is just it almost feels like a lost cause. I mean, even the journalist says it in the episode. One side has bicycles and the other one has tanks. You,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. I forgot to mention that. That's a great quote, and that's kind of what we're seeing right here happen. By the way, if anybody's watching this on YouTube Live or you watch these after shows afterwards, thank you for joining us. We would love it if you would give us a thumbs up and also put comments down below. Let us know if you have any questions or any thoughts about the episodes. I'm trying my best to understand everything, but there's always things that we might miss, and we want to include you in the conversation. If you're listening to this on iTunes or your favorite podcast player, go into iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and give us a 5-star and give us a good review. Let us know that you're enjoying these. So we appreciate that. All right. So we've got in Poland a lot of these things happening. Nancy's trying to tell the world that it's falling apart and nobody's listening to her. And then we've got Danzig falling. Basically, we see Kasia's father get killed, but her brother survive with her father's old, I guess, friend, and are just trying to survive in Danzig as it falls. And then Warsaw, we see Kasia at a cafe. The horns go off, the bombing sirens go off, and then we see all of these German planes, waves and waves of planes, which has got to be scary as all hell.
Yeah, that was a lot to watch. Like I said, this was nothing short of an action-packed episode. The minute that we're introduced to Acacia's father, he dies like 20 minutes after that. And it was hard to watch because we realized that his son was also fighting with him and he had to watch him die. And then you kind of go into this fight or flight, what would you do in that instinct? Because his son is not a trained um veteran or soldier in
Right.
any sort. So he's really trying to figure it out and he's trying to use his best judgment. And of course, he starts coughing, which gets them caught, which
Yeah.
was so cringy. Like I just wanted him to hold in his cough just as much as the guy that was with him did. So that was frustrating to watch. But I mean, these are regular people that are in these situations. You can't expect them to have these like, war mindsets and they've never
Right.
experienced something like this. On top of the fact that maybe 30 minutes ago or less than that, he just saw his father die and wasn't able to, pay him any respects, visit the body, anything. He just kind of had to leave. And that's hard for anyone, whether you're trained or not. So it was a lot. And then to shift to the daughter and see her at work. And like you said, the horns are going off and just seeing everybody in these different situations have to respond. I mean, I don't know what anyone would do. I mean, what do you do when you're sitting there having tea and then you realize there's an invasion happening as well?
I know it's kind of that fight, flight, or freeze kind of thing. So everybody reacts differently. It's crazy. And then Harry goes running after her, trying to break in the door. A bomb hits nearby and basically pushes him inside, where he just coughs. He got the wind knocked out of him. And then he decides that the only way he's going to get her out is by marrying her.
Yeah, that part. I know that the journalist was very right. She gave him some really good advice, and obviously he was able to take it. Even though we find out that it doesn't really work out the way that he thought. It was interesting to watch, just because I mean, when we were first introduced to this character, he's in love with another woman who is back where they were, worrying about him, visiting his mom, constantly checking the mail every time she comes in, hoping that she has a letter. And then you parallel and you see him, I guess, falling in love with this other woman, and then he's going to marry her. And I can just only imagine if she were to get on that train with him towards the end of the episode, how that would have played out. I mean, obviously, he's going to have to tell Lewis that he's married, but
Yeah.
I'm confused about how this dynamic is going to work. I know that's just going to be super heartbreaking to see him not only move on, but now he's married, and that has to be tough to see. That has to be tough to know, but it's kind of heartbreaking because you want them to find each other again because you
Hmm.
fell in love with him the first 5 minutes, but then you realize that he has this other life that he's living, and it's a lie. It's like a love triangle, and I don't know what side I'm on.
Tori, I can see you getting so excited. This is the drama you were expecting, wasn't it?
Yes, this definitely adds the drama to something. I mean, we knew it was going to be drama because it's a
Yeah.
war period piece, but it just adds that romance. It's kind of like, I don't know, like an elevated version of The Sound of Music. It's just like,
Yeah.
what is going on? So I don't, it struck a chord because, like I said, I love The
Yeah.
Sound of Music. It's one of my favorites. And just seeing this is just like, no, we've seen this happen before.
Right. And then one more thing I wanted to mention, we go to Paris, where we've got Dr. O'Connor working at the hospital, who's working on that French jazz musician Albert Falou. And
Hmm.
basically, Albert knows what his position is on life, but Webster O'Connor doesn't really know. So it seems like there's a love thing going there, a spark of some kind.
Yeah, and honestly, the nurse character, the nephew guy, he just kind of reminds me of. I feel like it's always thrown in there. I know during I don't know if you've seen Cabaret, but there's also a character, the main character, the woman, I'm forgetting her name, is also kind of like floating through life, even though these terrible things are happening around her. And I feel like this was a parallel to her character, this nurse guy that's in here. It just kind of seems like he doesn't really care to know what's going on or feel like it affects them in any type of way. And I know there's people out there who feel like, issues aren't issues until they come to their front door. And I definitely feel like he's one of those people.
Yeah.
The jazz player definitely adds a juxtaposition, I guess, to his character because the jazz player is Black. And I don't know, no matter where you place him in the world, he's probably going to feel the same way. He has been oppressed in probably every place that he's been. And so I understand. I think that that dynamic is definitely going to be interesting to see unfold because they come from two different backgrounds. And I feel like one kind of has this, like, he said it. He was like, I mean, I'm a white guy. Like, what do I have to fear? Talking to a Black man who doesn't have that same privilege. But they also, like you said, have this love dynamic going on. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to hold each other's hand through this situation.
Yeah, a lot of times you talk about if you're watching a show, characters being high status, low status. We have that figuratively and literally in here, thinking about the doctor versus the jazz player. We're thinking about Harry's mom versus Harry's, Manchester love interest. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out and what kind of love develops among war. Any final thoughts of this episode? I kind of feel like we touched on everything pretty well on this one.
Yeah, two things. I think the woman journalist, has just been a really good sound of reason throughout this episode. I mean, she told us that one side has bicycles, one side has tanks. Which one do you think is going to win? And then she also tells the translator, "Do you think a bomb has a name on it?" And I think that's a quote that a lot of the characters need to realize, especially the ones who kind of come from a more privileged mindset and things like that, is that your position in the world doesn't necessarily, exempt you from a bomb. If they decide to drop one right here, just because I'm Tory doesn't mean that it's not going to hit me. Right. And so I think that was a quote that definitely stuck out to me because I think we're going to see that play out. I mean, we kind of know because, like I said, it's a history piece how that's going to play out in the long run. But I think some of these naive characters are definitely going to have to wake up soon. And then towards the end of the episode, just kind of shifting gears, when Kasia decides to not give him the train and she instead puts her little brother on the train, I thought it was something that I think the audience didn't see coming. But once it happened, you kind of understand the position that she's in, whether you have, children of your own or younger siblings or just people that you care for that you feel like are in a less privileged position as you. It was just kind of like, wow, that's a selfless act because I mean, she's just as much in danger as her little brother. And she had that ticket out of there. She was able to kind of get married and then have a seat on the train, but she gave it to her brother. And I think it was something that kind of pulled on your heartstrings, especially because there's so much death and things going on in the episode. But it was one of those just kind of, moments of the episode.
I mean,
so
that's
nice to see.
Her family is there in Warsaw, not his family. And so again, you're exactly right with his class and also him saying, no, we'll go home to the safe spot and then we'll come back and get him. She's like, no, this is my family here. So yeah, I can see why she did that. I'm curious to see what happens. And I'm curious to see Helen Hunt's character, Nancy Campbell, since she's now in Berlin, how that's going to develop, because now she's in the middle of Germany where her neighbor says, well, the war is going to be over real soon. So I'm curious to see how the Germans kind of dismiss this as it's no big deal, or there's a reason why we're doing this. Anyway, so thank you for breaking down the show. You have a special segment for us.
Yes. So I know there's so much going on in this episode. There's so much about war. And I felt like, something that's an underlying theme in a lot of wars is that there's so many people that we don't really know about. There's so many people who have helped wars win or just kind of made certain advances that were monumental that we don't really know. So sort of like an unsung heroes type of segment. So my unsung hero was actually involved in the war that we're seeing play out on the screen right now. And I hope I get his name right. It is Witold Pilecki. Sorry, Witold Pilecki is the name. And he was actually served as a Polish officer And after serving his term, he actually volunteered himself to be captured by the Nazis so that he was able to report back on the interrogation processes, the execution processes, and kind of give an inside look. He understood there's no way to fully understand unless you're in that situation. And so he volunteered to get himself captured on purpose and was able to transfer a lot of information over to the Polish army and was actually able to help in a lot of situations. So that is my unsung hero of the episode.
Wow.
I hope you guys are liking them.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's
No
amazing.
problem.
All right, so from special segments to news.
So this is like some lighthearted news. We're jumping from like genre to genre, but one of the main characters, his name is actually Jonah Cure King. I'm like butchering names today, excuse me.
It's all right.
But he was actually cast. If you don't know who that is, because I'm terrible with remembering actors' names, but he plays the love interest between the two women, the one that's married. He's the
Oh,
translator. So I know,
Harry Chase.
yes. So
Okay.
I know there's some people that's like, who in the world is that? He plays Harry, the translator. And actually, he was casted as Prince Eric in the live action Little Mermaid that's coming up. Unfortunately, of course, filming has been halted due to what's going on now in the world. But he was casted. So that would be super exciting to see him play, I guess, another love interest on the screen.
Yeah, it's amazing how to see these most of these actors I haven't seen before, yet they've probably done a lot of projects before now, and they may at some point become really well known, and we're going to be like, remember when we were talking about them
Right.
in this little show. So thank you very much. Let's end it with predictions. Any predictions you have? I know we're really early.
Um, I don't know if this is prediction, but this is something that I definitely want to see. Now, we know that Harry's mom is not the most receptive to women who are in a lower class than
Mhm.
herself or her son. Now, my question is, what did Harry think that he was doing when he went and married a waitress? That's not doing any better. So I think when he comes back, seeing the dynamic between him and his mom, even though his wife won't be there, he'll definitely have to explain the little boy, who is her little brother.
Mhm.
That's going to be something interesting because I mean, she thought she hated Lewis, but I don't think she's gonna like Kasia any better just based off of class. So
Yeah.
I think we're definitely going to see that in next episode because we're going to see him get off the train and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So other than that, I already know that this series is going to be crazy. I don't I don't know. I don't know what else is going to happen. I'm just super excited for the next episode. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, well, going on that, I kind of feel like the Downton Abbey, the dowager that Harry's mom is kind of the dowager, but not in a funny, cute, endearing kind of way, kind of in a cold way. So this will be different, interesting to see a similar dynamic as far as a character played in a different way. So many possible things. I know that Albert, the French jazz musician, and the doctor are going to hook up in some way. I'm curious to see how. We'll see what happens as far as how far this series goes. Again, I didn't want to read too much before I watched the first episode. I just wanted to kind of fall in and see where we started.
Yeah, it's
So
definitely good to kind of come in with an open mind. I will say that I really hope that Lewis's father doesn't die because for all the Game of Thrones fans, that's actually the character that plays Ned Stark. And I just cannot see him die on the screen again. It was too
again,
heartbreaking the first time.
right.
I cannot go through that heartbreak again. I just can't.
All right. Well, we already had one wedding and it wasn't red, so we're good there. All right. On that note, Tori, where can we find you if anyone wants to reach out to you, ask questions or comments about the show?
Yes, for sure. You guys can find me on Instagram at Toxic Model, or you can find me on Twitter at Tori with two E's. If you type in TOREEL, pop up. And I'm super excited to chat with you guys. I'm also on the Motherland Fort Salem after show on Thursdays at 8 p.m. And I've also done a couple Netflix series. So if you're bored at home, like a lot of us are, go ahead and check those out.
Awesome. All right. And you can find me on Instagram at Lauren Kling, LORENKLING. From everybody at AfterBuzz and Tori, thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you next week for the next episode of World on Fire. Bye, everybody.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.